Your tongue is resting against the roof of your mouth right now. Not pressing, just there, a soft, wet weight. And in the space behind your eyes, a sentence just formed. Maybe it was asterisk, my tongue is where. Asterisk or asterisk, what is he talking about? Asterisk, that silent stream of words, that commentary track running behind your gaze. That's where you live. That voice is the seed of you, the thinker of your thoughts, the one reading these words in your head right now. But what if that voice isn't? What if that intimate, constant companion, the narrator of your life, the critic of your choices, the planner of your day, isn't the central command of your consciousness, but something else entirely? An artifact, a leftover tool, a piece of ancient survival software that finished installing itself in your skull tens of thousands of years ago and has been running in the background ever since. This isn't a philosophical puzzle. It's a biological one. And to solve it, we need to go to a place where that inner voice first became a matter of life and death, not in the libraries of Athens, but in the frozen dirt of a prehistoric camp, not in the mind of a philosopher, but in the skull of a child who has just seen something impossible. For 99.9% of human history, silence was a luxury you could not afford. The world outside your head was a chorus of immediate threat. The crack of a branch under a predator's weight. The rustle in tall grass that didn't match the wind. The absence of sound where your child should be playing. Your eyes would dart. Your heart would pound. But your survival didn't hinge on your senses alone. It hinged on what you did with that information. In the crucial 3 seconds between hearing the crack and deciding, freeze, flee, or fight. And in that gap, a new kind of space opened up. A private space. A silent space. Picture this. You are not you. You are a member of a small band. 50,000 years ago. The air is cold and smells of damp earth and smoke. You are teaching your son how to nap a flint core into a sharp hand axe. You strike once, a clean tap. A flake falls. He tries, but his strike is clumsy. Glancing off the side, the core tumbles into the dirt. He looks up at you, and you see not just disappointment in his eyes, but confusion. The sequence of actions, hold here, strike there, angle this way, is a tangled mess in his head. He cannot see the steps. So you do it again. Slowly, deliberately. You point to the striking platform. You mimic the hammerstone's arc. You do not speak, because complex language, as we know it, is still a seedling in your mind. But inside your own head, a process is firing. You are rehearsing. You are running a silent simulation of the action before you perform it. Asterisk hand here. Twist, strike down, not across. Asterisk when you perform the action slowly, that internal simulation is being projected outward through your deliberate movements for him to see. You are externalizing your inner instruction manual. He watches, and his own nascent inner space tries to mimic the sequence. Asterisk hold like that. Then that. Asterisk this is the birthplace of the inner voice, not as a storyteller, but as a simulator. It was a tool for behavioral rehearsal, a way to run a practice loop of a complex physical action before committing calories and risk to the real thing. A faulty spear throw wastes energy and alerts prey. A misstep in tool-making ruins precious material. A poorly timed dash from a predator ends everything. The individuals who could rehearse, even crudely, in the private theater of their minds had a staggering advantage. They made fewer fatal mistakes. They learned faster. They taught more effectively. If even one of your direct ancestors had lacked this budding ability to run a silent drill before acting, the chain that leads to you would have snapped in the dirt of a forgotten campsite. You are here because they practiced in silence. But then, something changed. The world became too complex for silent simulation alone. The problem was other people. Your band depends on cooperation. To bring down a large animal, to defend against a rival group, to raise children in a lethal world, you need to coordinate. And coordination requires predicting what someone else is going to do. You need to get inside their head, not with magic, but with a model. So your brain, this brilliant, desperate pattern-matching engine, began to use its own rehearsal software for a new, audacious purpose, to simulate other people. When that hunter stands up and points northeast, your inner simulator kicks in. Based on his past actions, the time of day, the recent tracks you saw, your mind runs a quick, silent scenario. He is going to check the gully for deer. This isn't telepathy. It's your own inner voice, using its predictive power, now voicing a guess about someone else's intent. You are, for the first time, mentally narrating the life of another. This was an evolutionary bomb going off. Because once you can simulate another's actions, you can also simulate their judgment. You can imagine what they think of you. And with that, the inner voice found its haunting, perpetual job. It became the avatar of the tribe. It internalized the social gaze. That voice that now critiques your lazy morning, that worries about your awkward joke, that replays an argument. Its original function was to keep you from being ostracized in a world where exile was a death sentence. An inner voice that constantly asked, asterisk, what will they think? Asterisk was the ultimate survival tool. It kept you in the game. It kept you alive. The voice transformed from a simulator of action to a simulator of reputation. It was no longer just strike here. It was now. If you take the last piece of meat, she will think you are greedy, and tomorrow she may not share her forage with you. But this created a profound confusion, one that has lived in every human since. If the voice that simulates the tribe is using the same channel, the same inner sound, as the voice that rehearses your spear throw, which one is the real you? The simulator of actions, or the conduit of social fear? The planner, or the critic? We buried that confusion under a story. We called the entire channel me. We gave it a name, identity, and a throne at the center of our consciousness. We assumed the narrator was the author. For millennia, this wasn't a problem. The voice was too useful to question. Its social warnings were too vital. Its planning function was too necessary. The illusion held, until we built a world where the greatest threats are no longer lions, but loneliness, no longer starvation, but stress. A world where the social tribe is now abstract, global, and perpetual, a humming, judgmental grid we carry in our pockets. The inner voice that evolved to save us from a momentary social misstep is now trapped in a cage of its own making, fed a nonstop stream of potential judgments, running threat simulations for a world that never stops presenting new threats to simulate. It has gone rogue, and we mistake its relentless, fearful commentary for our deepest self. But how can we know this is true? How can we prove that the you in your head is a pieced-together tool, and not the core of your being? The evidence comes from the moments when the system glitches, when the software reveals its seams. It shows up in the frozen terror of a child who has just realized something that will tear the whole illusion wide open. The child is maybe 7 years old. The place is a shallow cave, or perhaps a rock overhang. The ground cold and packed. She has watched her parent die. Maybe it was sickness, maybe an accident. The band has moved on, as they must. Survival permits no long vigil, but she has stayed behind, hidden, for one final moment. She places a simple stone tool, a hand axe, a scraper, something her parent made, beside the body. It is an act that makes no practical sense. The tool is still useful. It has value. Taking it would be the logical, surviving thing to do, but she leaves it. And in that act, archaeology sees the first crack in the system, the glitch. Because to miss someone, to grieve for them, you must first be able to hold them in your mind when they are not there. You must be able to run a simulation of a person that is so vivid, so persistent, that it persists even in the face of the overwhelming sensory fact that they are gone. That silent, inner simulator, built to predict the living, is now projecting a ghost. It is using the same software for a purpose it was never designed for. And in that emotional overload, the system reveals its parts. The thinker feels separate from the thought. The you, observing the grief, feels distant from the voice that is screaming, "Come back," inside. It is a terrifying, isolating experience. The child's world has just broken in two. The world out here, and the world in here, where the parent still exists. And they are not the same. This is the crisis point of human consciousness. Not the threat of predators, but the threat of meaning. The inner simulator, so brilliant at modeling physical and social reality, has now generated a reality of its own. And we have to live in it. The survival stakes become existential. If that inner world becomes too detached, too haunting, you cannot function. You stare into the fire instead of tending it. You forget to eat. The band moves on, and you get left behind. So, the system had to stabilize. It had to make sense of its own output. It did so by telling a story. The simplest, most stabilizing story possible. Asterisk, the ghost in the head isn't a glitch. It's a soul, asterisk, and the soul of the parent? It's somewhere else now. And this tool? Maybe it will help them where they're going. Ritual was born, not from spirituality, but from cognitive necessity, from a desperate need to reconcile the simulation with the senses. We began to bury tools, to paint bodies with ochre, to arrange shells and patterns. These weren't the first arts. They were the first debugging rituals. They were external actions designed to resolve an internal system error. The error of a simulator that wouldn't stop simulating a person who was no longer there. And what scientists have found next makes it even stranger, because this inner simulator didn't just struggle with the dead. It began to struggle with the future. Picture the same band, but now in a good season. Food is plentiful. The weather is mild. For the first time, you have a surplus of mental bandwidth. The simulator isn't fully occupied with immediate threats or social calculations. So it does what any complex system does with free capacity. It starts running test scenarios. It plays, what if we stored these berries in that hollow tree? What if we crossed those mountains? What if the river doesn't come back this spring? This is anxiety. But it is also innovation. The same voice that terrified you with social judgment is now terrifying you with future famine. And to silence it, you have to do something. You have to build a storage pit. You have to make a stronger shelter. You have to invent. Here is the breathtaking twist, the one that reframes everything you think you know about your own mind. Your inner voice is not your identity. It is your body's oldest and most sophisticated sensory organ. Think of it like this. You have nerves in your skin that sense pressure and temperature. You have a cochlea that senses sound waves. You have retinas that sense light. Each is a specialized receiver, turning raw data from the outside world into electrical signals your brain can process. Your inner voice is exactly that, but for non-present reality. It is a biological instrument that senses potential futures, social probabilities, and the persistent shadows of the past. It turns the abstract into a signal you can hear. It makes the invisible visceral. When you lie awake at 3 a.m., heart pounding about a meeting tomorrow, you are not thinking, you are sensing. Your simulator organ is picking up on the social danger of a potential failure, the threat to your status, and it is translating that abstract threat into a visceral, auditory-like experience. A barrage of what-ifs and catastrophic dialogue. It feels like thinking, but it's closer to seeing with your ears. You are perceiving a future that doesn't exist yet. This explains everything that feels broken about it, why you can't just turn it off. You can't decide to stop seeing or hearing. The voice has the same urgency as a scream or a sudden flash of light, because, to your nervous system, the potential social threat it's sensing is that urgent. Exile was death, a failed plan was starvation, and it explains the glitches. In profound grief, the organ is sensing the overwhelming, persistent shape of a person who is gone. It's receiving conflicting data. The eyes say empty, but the social simulator says presence. The result is system strain, the pain of dissonance. In moments of déjà vu, the simulator may be briefly misfiring, creating a sense of prediction for an event that is only occurring now. When you talk to yourself while searching for lost keys, where did I put them? You are not asking yourself a question. You are using the vocalized output of the simulator to trigger associative memory networks. You are broadcasting the signal to better sense the answer. The evidence for this is etched in stone and bone and in the very wiring of your brain. First, the archaeological proof. The leap of the inner simulator correlates perfectly with this symbolic explosion in the archaeological record. For over 150,000 years, our ancestors made the same practical tools. Then, roughly 70,000 years ago, we see beads. We see cave paintings that aren't just pictures of animals, but patterns of dots, hand stencils, geometric shapes. We see burial with grave goods. These are not random arts. They are the externalized footprints of the inner simulator. A bead is a social marker, a simulator's prediction about status and identity made solid. A painted symbol on a wall is a shared concept, a way to sync up the simulators of an entire group, to ensure everyone is sensing the same social and spiritual realities. The voice in the head had become so complex it needed to project its output onto the world, to make its simulations shared, to make them real. The cave wall was the first social media feed, a way to align the tribe's internal narratives. Second, the neurological proof. Brain imaging shows that when you engage in internal speech, you aren't just activating language centers. You are activating the sensory and motor cortex. You are activating the same regions that light up when you actually move your hands or hear a real sound. Your brain is running a low-power simulation of action and sensation. It is rehearsing. More tellingly, in people with certain forms of schizophrenia, where the inner voice is perceived as an external, alien force, we see a critical breakdown. The brain area responsible for tagging self-generated thoughts, the anterior cingulate cortex, fails to activate. The simulator is running normally, but the "this is mine" tag is missing. The sensory organ is working, but the part that identifies its output as internal sensation is broken. The person experiences their own predictive social modeling as an external voice. It is literally a failure to recognize an internal sense. Third, the developmental proof. A child's inner voice develops in lockstep with their understanding of other minds. Before age 3 or 4, a child cannot reliably pass the false belief test, understanding that someone else can believe something that isn't true. This is the dawn of sophisticated social simulation, and it is exactly when private, audible self-talk blossoms. The child uses out-loud narration to guide their play, to rehearse social scenarios. They are calibrating the new organ. Over time, that speech becomes internal, silent, and incessant. It doesn't go away. It goes underground. And finally, the evolutionary proof. We share the basic brain structures for planning and social processing with other primates. But the explosive growth in our prefrontal cortex and its dense connections to the language centers created a unique hybrid. It fused the tool for complex communication with the tool for simulation. Language didn't create the inner voice. It was captured by the simulator to use as its signal. The inner monologue is the hum of that fusion. Which brings us back to you, to the tongue resting on the roof of your mouth, to the silent sentence that formed about it. That sentence was not the beginning of a thought. It was the readout of a sensing. Your simulator organ, constantly scanning your state, sensed the novel focus of your attention on your tongue's position. It translated that focused awareness into a linguistic signal, a thought, to make you conscious of the sensation. It turned a feeling into a report. The voice isn't the pilot. It's the cockpit instrument that just flashed a light. And this changes everything about how you relate to the noise in your head. The critic isn't your deepest truth. It's your body's ancient alarm for social threat, calibrated for a world of 50-person tribes, now hopelessly overloaded by the internet. The 3 a.m. anxiety isn't a character flaw. It's a sensory organ screaming that it detects 1,000 possible futures, and it can't distinguish which one is real. The replay of an awkward conversation isn't you. It's the organ running a diagnostic, trying to tune its prediction algorithm for next time. The turmoil isn't a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are using a 50,000-year-old internal compass. In a world made of magnetic noise, the needle is spinning because it is sensing every possible north at once. But this also means the voice has a setting. It is a sense you can learn to interpret, not a tyrant you must obey. You don't argue with your sense of temperature. You put on a coat. You don't obey your sense of balance blindly. You use it to navigate. The way forward isn't to silence the voice. It's to recognize its signals for what they are, the profound, ancient, and sometimes misfiring sensations of a mind sensing all of time at once. The pain of the past, the probability of the future, the dense, vibrating web of the social present. It means the next time that voice begins its familiar, fearful chant, you can feel, just beneath the words, the hum of the most miraculous survival instrument ever evolved. You can thank it for its warning. And then, like the child placing the tool by the body, you can perform a simple, external act, a walk, a breath, a stroke of pen on paper, not to obey the sense, but to answer it, to translate its ancient signal into a new and quieter kind of world. So the voice that feels most intimately you is, in its deepest logic, a sense, a biological instrument for navigating what isn't here. And that fact lands not in a textbook, but here, in your chest, in the quiet after the explanation, in the space where a lifelong assumption just dissolved. Because this changes the weight of the room around you. The criticism that hissed while you scrolled through photos of a party you weren't invited to. That wasn't a verdict on your worth. It was your social sense organ, detecting a shift in the tribal landscape and translating that shift into a scream. The dread that tightens your stomach before you hit send on an email, that isn't cowardice. It's the same organ, sensing the cliff edge of reputation, a potential fall that once meant physical peril. It is sensing, with ancient precision, a danger that is no longer there. We mistake the signal for the self. We hear the alarm and believe we are the fire, but you are the one hearing it. You are the quiet space that existed before the simulation software booted up in childhood. You are not the narrator. You are the one the narrator was built to guide. You are the occupant of the body, not the commentary track about the body. And knowing this is like feeling a door you never knew was closed swing open inside your skull. The modern world, then, isn't causing your anxiety. It's exposing your anatomy. For millennia, this sense organ operated in a stable, slow-moving environment. Its predictions were based on 50 faces, the turn of the seasons, the known trails. Its warnings were specific, infrequent, and vital. Now, it is immersed in a blinding blizzard of social data. Every scroll is 1,000 new faces, 1,000 potential judgments. Every news alert is a new, global catastrophe to model. The organ isn't malfunctioning. It is performing its evolutionary function perfectly, sensing every possible social threat and future risk. In a landscape of infinite possibility, it is doing exactly what it was built to do. And it is exhausted. The solution isn't to numb it or fight it. You don't cure a heightened sense of hearing by hating sound. You learn what each signal means. You put in earplugs when the noise is meaningless. So the next time that inner critic berates you for a minor mistake, you can pause. You can feel, beneath the words, the ancient pulse of the signal. Asterisk social error detected. Risk of status lowering. Asterisk probability of exclusion. It is not truth. It is data. You can acknowledge the signal. The tribe sensor is firing. And then, with the freedom of the modern world, choose your response. You are no longer a prisoner of a 50-person band. You can decide the old danger is gone. When you lie awake at 3 a.m., trapped in a loop of hypothetical disaster, you are not a bad sleeper. You are a time traveler. Your simulator organ is doing its most advanced work, sensing multiple, branching futures. The panic is the friction of a mind trying to feel its way through a dimension it cannot see. You can thank it for its vigilance. And then, you can gently remind it, and yourself, that the future it is sensing is not a place you can live. It is a map, and you are the cartographer, not the territory. This is the quiet liberation. You are off the hook. The voice's fear is not a prophecy. Its regret is not a life sentence. Its commentary is not your score. They are readouts from an ancient, brilliant, and overworked piece of sensory equipment, which brings us to the final, tender twist. The most beautiful evidence for all of this isn't in a brain scan or an archaeological dig. It's in a feeling you've already had. It's in those rare, golden moments when the voice stops. When you are so absorbed in a task, your hands in soil, your eyes on a sunset, your body in a dance, lost in a loved one's eyes, that the narrator falls silent. In those moments, there is no past, no future, no social calculation. There is only the pure, unnarrated present. And in that silence, you don't feel absent. You feel most profoundly present. You feel like you. That is the clue. In the absence of the sense organs reporting, you don't vanish. You come into focus. The simulator is a tool for navigating what is not here. When you are fully, completely here, it has nothing to do. It rests. And what remains is not emptiness, but the you that was always there, listening. So tonight, or tomorrow, in the middle of an ordinary day, you might remember this. Your tongue will be on the roof of your mouth. A thought will form, and this time, you might feel the subtle shift. You might sense, just for a second, the gap between the forming of the words and the one who hears them. You might feel the ancient, miraculous machinery hum, and know it for what it is, a gift from ancestors who practiced in silence, so that you could one day hear the difference between the map and the territory, between the instrument and the musician, between the voice in your head and the you it was built to protect.